Looks like I'm having deer come and visit me every evening around here. You are too close to me. They must be feeding you around here or something. Someone's feeding you. You are too tame. I could take you down with a 22 pistol right now. You are too close. There, get out of here. That's right. So just documenting my learning process. Sometimes I come into a new camp like this and I get out and I just, like anybody would, I'd take a look at the area, what campfires there are set up, what the wood possibilities are. Sometimes the wood is cleared out, and other times you go into a different camp and there's all sorts of great wood around and you're like, oh man, we're going to build some awesome campfires here. And a lot of times I'll just look on the ground too, and I can notice like, oh, footprints, like when's the last time people were around here, and it's pretty obvious. If you see new footprints, you're going to be like, oh, well, someone was just in this camp recently, and you can tell by the number of footprints and how fresh they are that someone was in this camp recently, and that's kind of valuable information to know, is it someplace that a lot of people go to. And so I'm no expert, but you just start through that, looking at footprints, you start to get in tune and look more and more on the ground for other footprints, and they just start to tell a story. It's all pretty cool, actually, and just documenting my learning process about things. For instance, see that guy right there? Okay, that is a really fresh print from a deer, right? And I can tell that, oh, that deer, that was, if I pull back around, okay, it's fairly close to my truck, which I just put in recently. So last night I just came in here, I get the campsite, and by the time I get this far back in the backcountry and find my site, I just crash out in my truck, usually the first night. And then this second day I get everything set up. Well, when I was eating near the back bed area last night on the tailgate, there was a lot of actually 2 or 3 deer just that would not give up, actually, back here, and watching me eat and trying to get whatever they could. But apparently, if I zoom back into that footprint, or that deer print, I'm sorry, back where I was talking about, let's see if I can find it. Yeah, there it is. And it looks like they came even closer to my truck last night, because that is so fresh. I can tell it's just so fresh. It was just really recent. And it's interesting. It all kind of tells a story, I can start to tell, just as my learning process, just intuitively, you start looking at these things. Like, for instance, let's pick out a good one. Let's pick out a really, really good one. I'm going to try to pick out maybe one of my footprints. Well, you can kind of see it right there, but even maybe right there. Okay, so that's a footprint from me. And that's really recent, right? I mean, you can look at that. You can see the treads. I mean, there's untouched dirt just leveled beneath the grooves of my tread on my. So that's really, really fresh. And so you can start to get a feeling of, oh, well, that was just now. And maybe this one over here, not as much. And that one there, right there, and so on. Maybe that right there, not as much, right? Or take a look at another print over there. You can see that one, and it's a little bit more disturbed. You can kind of get a sense after a little bit of how long it was ago and how fresh it is, and a timeline. And of course, this is probably, to a great tracker, this is like common knowledge. But it's really cool. You start to piece together all this information, like going back to, where is it? Yeah, our first print here with the deer print. That is so fresh, I can tell. Just by observation with my own treads and other treads, when I see other footprints from people, when I first get into camp, I can tell how long it's been, and I kind of judge their print versus my print on my foot, and knowing those two prints and saying, oh, well, I know the previous print was from other people in camp was older, and then I have I have this new print, so you know, I can judge between the two. Well, one's older obviously and one's mine, so it's newer, and I can get a sense, start to get a sense that was just last night. Look how fresh that is. See, just by looking at my prints, judging things versus other people's prints. And so just documenting the process, it's pretty cool, kind of learning about all this this kind of tracking stuff. It really tells a history out here, and you can start to piece this information. It's just like, well, it's like a backcountry video camera. So continuing on with my own self-education of tracks and the story that they tell, you'll notice here that this is a deer track, and it's pretty fresh, as I've noted from how I learned on the last video. This was left last night. Very fresh track. But this morning, well, just looking at the scene around here in my camp while eating breakfast, I noticed that the orientation of this particular track, of course, is going like this, right? See that in my hands, right? It's going in this direction, right? So for purposes of illustrating my point, I'm going to place this little triangle right next to it, right? So it's showing the orientation of the hoof, right? Of the foot, like that. Okay. And as I back up, see, I see another one right here. But in this one, the orientation is different. You'll notice that it goes more like that. Okay, so there I'm looking at that one. And so in that case, I'm going to place my little triangle here like this, showing the orientation of the hoof, right like that. Okay, and then to speed things up a little bit, I can look back out and I can get another track here where I've already labeled the direction of the print of the track going that way, right? And I've taken a look back around here. Oh, and there's another one. And I can take a look at that print and look at that print. The orientation is that way, right? And I've labeled it as such with the triangle already. This one's really clear, right? You see the orientation there? That way, the orientation is like that, right? So, and I've gone over here and continued to take a look. Oh, what about this one? Here, try to get it with the sun, but the orientation is like that. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, let me back up a little bit and show you the full scene of all the triangles. So look how all these triangles kind of line up. You see? They're going in this direction, and then that direction, and this direction, then this one's going in the other direction. I pull back up here, you'll see that this one's going in that direction, that one's going in that direction, that one's coming in the opposite direction, and these over here, this one's going that direction, this one's coming this direction. All different directions, right? So what does that tell me as an overall picture? Look at all the triangles. What does that tell you? Think about how these tracks are being laid out. They're all going in different directions, and they're right in this one little spot right here. See that? Look at the full picture. That one, 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 in the direction of all of them. What does that tell you? Well, that tells me that there is a deer here that, for lack of a better term, is just loitering, right? They're just right here, probably with their head hunched over, trying to pick things off the ground, and just around here, just pacing back and forth and just being in one little localized spot, moving, okay? So there's a deer just standing there, kind of in that grazing position probably, and just going back around and just loitering in that one spot. Okay, if the deer were not loitering in one position and they were just moving on through, walking in a linear fashion, you would expect to see some sort of track pattern like this, right? A track in one direction, and then a little further in a linear pattern. Another track in the same direction, and then over here in a linear pattern in the same direction. Then over here in the same direction, all moving in the same direction in an overall linear path with all the tracks in the same direction, right? So pulling back, as you can see here, those linear tracks. Okay, well, something like that, right? You would expect to see them all kind of lined up like that, all in the same direction. All the tracks in the same direction, just kind of moving all in the same line. But that's not what we saw in the other case. So here's a really good example of what I mean by a linear set of deer tracks, right? It's pretty muddy ground, so you can really see the deer tracks very well. I'll point them out to you, even though there's one right there, right? And then the next one is right there. And then the next one is right there. And then the next one is right there. You can see them making a line, right? Because they're traveling in a line. You can see the track right there, right? Perfect deer track. And then as we go further on up the line, there you go. There's another great one. There's another one. And there's another one, and so on, right? So you'd expect that the deer would be traveling, in a line according to the line of those tracks. And if I take a look at the loitering scene, again with all the triangles here, triangles there, and let me keep an eye on that. All right, that's the area of the loitering deer. That makes sense from what I heard last night. Bam, right there, okay? So there is my truck tent, which I slept in last night, right? Up there. And here is the location of the loitering deer. Just moving around in one location there. And that's exactly lines up with the story of what I heard last night. I was in my tent there, and that deer was so close. At the time, I knew it was an animal. I was probably thinking it was a deer, but I didn't know. But that makes sense with the deer, the tracks here that line up with the deer loitering in this area, right? And it was so close to my tent right there. You can't really get a sense of the distance with the camera as much, that I swear I could hear it chewing practically. I mean, it was so close. And during the middle of the night, you kind of wonder, if you don't have this kind of confirmation of history, well, what is that, But I can wake up in the morning, see the tracks, and say, well, that picture lines up with what happened there last night. So very interesting. Another little point of my learning process of how I piece together what the tracks are showing me as an overall picture.